The MBA is all about bringing together diverse talent from all over the world to achieve their full potential. Now, whether that's engineers, bankers, scientists, creatives, well, talent is at the heart of the career of my center court guest, Ike Zhang, a graduate of the MIT Sloan class of 2021 and now an agent for the United Talent Agency in Los Angeles. He studied chemistry and Asian languages at Amherst, and after 3 years of consulting at EY Parthenon, he began his MBA in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And during those 2 years at Sloan, he was working with Paramount Pictures on film marketing strategy. He then took that Sloan experience to join UTA to focus on ideas, opportunities, and talent. You see how all of this comes together, and it's lovely to welcome you, Ike. That was just a brief intro, but tell us about, a path that at some point led to heading to business school
Yeah.
and what was driving that.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, thank you, Matt and Poets and Quants for having me. I've always wanted to, since I was a kid, wanted to work in entertainment. And that was the goal. I didn't really know what it meant to be working in entertainment. As a kid, I would, watch, TV shows and watch movies. And I'll be like, how do I get into TV? How do I become one of them? But as I gotten older, I was like, okay, I'm more fascinated with kind of the business side and the creative business side of it of the industry. So after leaving Amherst College, graduating in 2016, I moved on to work at EY Parthenon. At the time, it was Parthenon Group, and then it got acquired by EY. But during that time, I focused most of my efforts on media, tech, and consumer retail space sectors, largely because I felt like those were adjacent, sectors to entertainment. I was based in Boston, so there wasn't that many entertainment specific projects that I could work on. However, during that time, as I was, working on these projects, I started to see how getting a little bit more exposure onto how different parts of either that is Hollywood or how the tech and media landscape is starting to merge, especially during the years that I was working there. You started seeing the influx of streamers, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. Um, all those elements really provided kind of more insight into how decision-making processes are done. It didn't feel as far away as it did before. And I had a couple mentors, some of which have gone to business school, and they said, "Hey, like it will be tougher for you to try to pivot directly from." Consulting into entertainment, but it'll be easier if you had a business school degree where you reset yourself as a student. And that was kind of my initial rationale to go into business school. Started, applying in 2018, obviously, got into Sloan, went during 2019 to 2021. And during that time, I kind of had a very deliberate focus. I wasn't going to re-recruit for any of the financial sectors or consulting. I was focusing all of my efforts on making this pivot successful. And that involved going through, I spent a year working with Paramount during that time. It was COVID. Everyone was able to work remote. So I was able to end up working for them for a whole year while I was in business school. But I also needed to boost up some of my entertainment, like pure entertainment experiences. And some of that was taking on unpaid internships, reading scripts for directors and producers, working with smaller production studios and writing coverage, making sure that we analyze, the film, does it make sense, while also working for a larger studio like Paramount, seeing how films were being marketed to the mass audience. So that's kind of where I was like, all right, I'm getting my grounding. I kind of get a sense of where I can make this happen. At the same time, at Sloan, while Sloan is not known for entertainment, it did have several very strong resources while I was there. One of which was this Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, the biggest student-led conference. During that time, I was one of the organizing students while being an MBA candidate there. helping organize the sports panels, helping put on the entire conference, and getting a lot of exposure to a lot of the TV networks like ESPN, Fox Sports, and recognizing how storytelling and analytics and sports all kind of come together. And now into, led into my job ultimately at UTA, where I started off at UTA in more of a executive role where I was doing a lot of the analytics, running analytics, figuring out film financing budgeting plans and back-end calculations for actors and creatives. And then that led to an opportunity. It was very serendipitous where our creators and audio department had realized that I have a unique skill set that wasn't, traditional in entertainment, which was having a consulting background. And there was an opportunity where he was like, "Hey, I think you could be a great agent if you wanted to make this leap." So that's how I made the leap internally within UTA to become a podcasting agent. And then now rolled into the creators department, which I, not only look at podcasting, but also digital creators. I also work with comedians. And the sports element is to always come back to me. UTA has Clutch as one of their sports divisions. So we work with all these athletes with their digital content and podcasts. So I think all this path really started because going to Sloan and going to business school was able to give me a fresh slate and give me kind of reset and be able to pivot.
Wow. So there was you, there was Ryan Gosling, there was Brad Pitt. You're all watching TV as kids and thinking, "Hey, I want to be in this industry." Now, Ryan Gosling, of course, made it onto the Disney Channel. We had to wait a few years for Brad Pitt to emerge, but he did make Moneyball, which I
Yeah,
guess
yes, he
it
did.
brings the analytics and sports entertainment
Yeah.
together. So finding inspiration and a mentor that said, business school might be the right way to pivot into an industry. So you think about enjoying a successful career with the Parthenon Group. What was the thinking in terms of does it make sense, the investment, both in time, money, and perhaps some of the more intangible things that you were looking to get out of the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, going to business school, it felt like it made sense because everyone around me in consulting in Parthenon had either gone to business school or in the process of applying. So I was very much in an environment where I saw the benefits of business school. Not only is the network that you're building, but also the skill set and just kind of a general industry know-how of how to navigate difficult situations. And so for me, business school felt like a reasonable next step, even if I didn't want to pivot. I felt like I needed to, and also consulting, you're coming out of undergrad, you're working, several, relatively long hours, and a lot of folks position, it's finance and consulting, so use business school as a way to have a little breather, or
Right.
where you learn a lot of the things that you're doing, and then you have 2 years to kind of reset and recuperate and go back into the company or switch a different career. So for me, business school was always on my radar. But I think when I was choosing business school, that was more of a deliberate, like trying to figure out where made the most sense. Was I trying to go for a school that was known for entertainment? In which case, I could be at UCLA or USC Marshall, or going to Columbia, which has a pretty strong entertainment program as well. Or did I want to kind of focus on kind of being either a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? And for me, my rationale going to Sloan was obviously I got into Sloan, and then the two was the fact that MIT has got an incredible brand name. And that brand name carries beyond just our, traditional industries. People in Hollywood, you know, associate MIT with a certain level of pedigree, and it's a very shiny brand name that I felt like, yes, while MIT did not have the same alumni base in entertainment as maybe some of the other schools, but it does have a very strong brand name. And I know the network that I built around me will ultimately be very helpful, regardless of which career I will be in. And that led to, me making some of my closest friends in business school at Sloan. In fact, my best man at my wedding was in my cohort at Sloan. So it's it's definitely, I never regretted that those 2 years. I find is one of the most rewarding and enjoyable times. Even during COVID, where a good portion of that time we were either online or hybrid.
You talk about the MIT brand, which resonates, whether on the east or the west coast, and indeed all around the world, and perhaps the relationship that Sloan then has with MIT. They talk about, what is it, menus and manus, mind and hand.
Yep.
Um, what was that course load like, given, of course, that you'd also then made this commitment to Paramount and what you were doing beyond the classroom?
Yeah. So I definitely think, the MIT brand of, academic rigor was definitely not lost in the Sloan management program curriculum. Um, Sloan has one core semester that everyone has to take. Some other schools will have 2 semesters, but that one first semester where you're in with your cohort, you're taking all the classes together. It was pretty rigorous. Particularly, I think MIT is one of the few programs that really emphasizes on the data element, where we had a class called DMD, data modeling and decision making, where we all had to learn a little bit of R and SQL and coding. And it's not necessarily like we are learning for the sake of becoming coders, but rather a general understanding of how to identify problems if you are, placed with them in the future in your workforce. So the curriculum itself, while challenging, wasn't to the point where we couldn't do other things. And I think business schools, especially, a lot of the top ones, have a very good gauge of trying to make sure that there's a balance between the social and the academic. And while we definitely had, we definitely had some, I wouldn't say pull all-nighters, but it had to, stay up a little later for certain memos or certain midterms. But at the end of the day, we know that going to Sloan, you're going to get the education that you need. It's going to be learned from osmosis, from being around the people you are. And once you kind of get through the first semester at Sloan, everything else you kind of have a lot more flexibility in structuring your schedule. And when I was working with Paramount, it was my entire second year at Sloan. So I was able to structure my schedule in a way that made sense. And the extra flexibility being at home, doing, online courses made it a little easier. A little more complicated when we went back into hybrid, half in person, half online, but it still worked out. And I was able to get both the work experience and a full-time MBA.
I'm just thinking you're the Sloan graduate that had good weather. Um, you talk about, working hard, playing hard, and you'd referred earlier to, clubs, including, in fields of sport, entertainment that can have such reach and impact. So, beyond the classroom, a tremendous number of opportunities for both an industry experience, personal development, leadership experience. Talk about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, my time at Sloan, I think you are placed into positions of leadership where you are given a lot of ownership and agency. So for myself, when I joined Sloan, one of the first thing I did was I joined the Entertainment Media Club. I started off this first year as a vice president of the club, building out treks, LA treks. In fact, the LA trek that we organized, that I was in charge of, was the last trip that we had taken before COVID shut down in 2020. So we had brought out, a handful of students from Boston to LA, visiting, the Disney headquarters, Warner Brothers headquarters, UTA, Netflix, understanding, how to navigate, running a organizational campaign like that. But also getting face-to-face opportunities with these employers. And then second year, I became the co-president of the Entertainment Media Club, where I was able to, pass on some of the institutional knowledge that I gained from the year one onto the next succession of leaders. That, along with so many cultural events where we had, Sloan had C functions or cultural functions where you highlighted specific cultures, and you were able to put on a huge production and show for the students to really engross themselves into different multicultural experiences. Those are fantastic. And I think, going to a school where it's very much supportive, they recommend you to continue to expand beyond your internal bubble, that was very, very encouraging. And I had such an incredibly rewarding time.
So if we go back to the kid sitting in front of the TV,
Mm.
and now the career that you're enjoying with UTA, thinking about perhaps, what surprised you most about the experience at a personal level? Clearly there was so much to discover at Sloan, but when you think about the journey that you've taken, what do you see in the mirror?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I never thought I was going to become an agent. I knew that I wanted to work in entertainment. I knew that I wanted to work on some of the business elements of entertainment. But I didn't think becoming an agent was a path that was available. Typically, most agencies, the way that the people are hired is through starting in the mailroom, becoming an assistant, working, on a couple desks, and then becoming a coordinator, and eventually you pay your dues and you become an agent. Um, I think I got very lucky in the right timing to be in a position where you saw the social media boom, you saw podcasting starting to explode, and being able to be in that position where they needed people who were, independently minded, interested to trying to find out new sectors of an industry that's, growing along with you at the same time. Um, I've truly enjoyed my time and continue to enjoy my time at UTA because I am very much in the midst of it. Being at an agency, you are the hub of all entertainment. Everything comes through you, and you kind of see what kind of deals are coming through. You are forming specific deal points that become precedents for future deals, and that's super exciting, particularly in my sector. And at the end of the day, it's I I feel like my job right now as an agent is so different from my old consulting role. My old consulting role, I used to be, looking at data, building out models, building out a lot of slides and presenting. Now, I don't think I ever open up Excel or PowerPoint. 95% of my day I'm on phone calls. Or I'll spend time looking through contracts, making sure that our clients, the deals that were negotiated are, reflected accurately on the contracts. And it's very much an interpersonal job. I would say, like, and as an agent, your job is mostly sales, essentially. You are pitching your clients, you are pitching to buyers why your actor or podcaster deserves a deal. And that, I think, some of the skills that I learned while being in business school, communication skills, leadership, and being able to sell effectively, um, those are my day-to-day go-to skill sets that become very transferable.
Yeah.
And that's useful anywhere, regardless of what kind of job you're doing.
Yeah. Well, spending so much of your day on calls, we're blessed to have you joining us on this Zoom call for Centre Court. 6, 7 years ago, you might have been looking at poets and quants, thinking about where business school would fit alongside all of those consultants, where it was, almost preordained. It strikes me that, you really shaped a wonderful Sloan experience, pursuing the LA track, all of the dimensions that you brought. So, as you think about the next gen, looking at business school, what would your advice be, both in terms of then selling themselves, as you would do for some of your clients, but equally that determination to really make it about their own personal goals and ambitions and how they can achieve that?
Yeah. I think business school is a great way for I would say like a more mature adult version of you to make a reset and figure it out. I think undergrad is a period of time where you're finding yourself. But after a couple years of work experience, you kind of gotta get a sense of what work environment it looks like. Going to business school with that now in your back pocket gives you a much clearer picture of how you want the rest of your career to look. For me, going to business school was my path to get into the pivot into entertainment. Um, if that is a path that, students are considering business school for, it's a fantastic path for you to pivot. But if you were trying to stay and go up in your organization, that is a fantastic path as well. So it really comes down to forming it the way that fits you. And I think a lot of times as students, as we go through recruiting season, you kind of get into this rat race where it's like, oh, my friend already got an internship, with a banking firm, or, consulting gives out internships much earlier. We saw them getting in October, and I'm still, February, and I don't have a job yet. I didn't get my Paramount job offer until April of the year that I was supposed to start that summer. So it's very much being able to maintain steady and be patient, keeping your eyes on your lane, and then consistently evaluating, is this the path? Is the blood worth the bleed, so to speak? If we were going to do this, does it make sense? And I had a lot of friends who dabbled into entertainment at Entertainment Media Club at Sloan. They were interested, they came into it, but ultimately they realized maybe, I value certain elements of my old job that, either is more secure, better pay, or more work-life balance. Those are things that you have to ultimately make that decision yourself. And I think, going to a business school where you can get to have some of that experience through internships will be a great way to kind of dip your toes into it and see if it actually fits.
Yeah, well, I guess coming full circle, we talked about both Sloan and UTA as an opportunity to focus on ideas and talent, and clearly what you're achieving, Ike. It's wonderful to be able to capture that and share it with a
Uh,
global audience. Inspiring. Thank you. Thank you for making the time to join us and share your story.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And, always a fan of Poet and Quants. It was a very useful resource when I was going through business school. So hopefully, pay it forward.